Hey everybody, ronarray here, and my league start with my monk martial artist build went pretty great. Twister has been nice early on, and unarmed leveling also pretty pleasant. I also had an opportunity to test various martial artist nodes, and right now already swapped the build to waste on version and farming tier 15s. So in this video, I wanted to give the update and showcase what you need to focus on while progressing your build, how to make it faster, how to make it dealing more damage, at what point you need to swap, and how to make your general experience with it as pleasant as possible. You can also check all information in the written guide that I have in the description and in the pinned comment. There's also a lot of helpful info on how to play the build too. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you appreciate the updates and want to see more of those, and let's go! So first off, the answer to the question that many people are asking at the moment. In the Act 4 there's a new quest with a shark fin. When you're finishing it, you have two opportunities: take Rakiatas or Calms. At the moment, I recommend Calms because we will be able to get deflection from a few other sources, but getting at the same point evasion and energy shield is absolutely amazing. And talking about the bell setup, there's also a pretty nice news. Killing Palm at the moment, together with Thrill of the Kill and Blazing Critical, is working just fine when you're hitting the bells. As you can see, I'm getting both Thrill of the Kill and Blazing Critical, which is very good. We've been unsure if Thrill of the Kill is going to work, but it's actually working, which is pretty surprising. However, there's like a few bugs that you will need to keep in mind. When you're using charge stuff with charges, sometimes you're not receiving power charges because your charge stuff is killing the bells faster than you're killing Palm. It's well known, maybe GG will fix it a little later, but keep it in mind in the boss fights. Let's talk about supports for unique martial artist skills. For Hollow Focus, I'm currently using Magnified Area, Cooldown Recovery, Close Combat and Blind. I'm practically using that exactly in that order when you're adding them one by one. Cooldown Recovery helping a lot, and I believe just getting more bells for Hollow Focus is feeling absolutely great even in the campaign, especially since Hollow Focus bells are spawning on boss or like on enemies very often. If you don't really like close combat, you can also try something like Execute, but I think it's working just fine. For Hollow Resonance from your Ascendancy, I recommend to run Magnified Area, Cooldown Recovery, Blind again and Stun. Unfortunately, you can't place Rage into Hollow Resonance, so it's just not going in, and we changed the build accordingly. For the charge stuff, I'm using only Prolonged Duration and Perpetual Charge. And now let's talk about the swap. So when you're reaching the maps around level 70-65 depending, you will need to swap to Whirling Assault. For that, you will need to get the stuff. And that's a pretty important part. Since you're swapping from unarmed, it's very important to get as good stuff as possible. And in general, I recommend to get elemental stuff with elemental cold damage and lightning or fire. It always should be cold plus something else. And add the stuff itself perfectly. You need to either have increased elemental damage with attacks or plus level 4 melee skills. Having both at the moment could be too expensive and you probably don't have that currency. I recommend at least 300 LA DPS when you're repicking to Whirling Assault. Until you will get the stuff, don't repick and keep playing the wave and keep playing the basic setup with like Fallen Thunder. And let's talk about swap in terms of what kind of gems and skills you're going to use. First off, Whirling Assault right here, I recommend to get 5 sockets for it as fast as possible. And for the supports, you're running Rage, Ancestral Call, Pinpoint, Efficiency and Elemental Armament. The last part is Elemental Armament. You can drop if you don't have the last socket. If you do, just add it back. As the last one, you can also try to run like Heavy Swing, for example, or basic bonuses like that, but if your elemental damage is good enough, elemental armament is probably going to work better. So for the Whirling Assault, a very big part is your critical hit chance. So you need to reach as high as possible, and that's why we're using Pinpoint. Without Pinpoint, I have about 44%, but with Pinpoint, it's about 71%. It's going to help us a lot to just constantly trigger Hollow Resonance from the back. Next step is bells. Since when you're hitting enemies with Whirling Assault, you're constantly generating combo. You can use your own bell right here. For that, I just recommend to run a normal one with Magnified Area, Durability, Ancestral Call, and Close Combat. Bell is going to appear and you need to use it at least a few times. There's like a limit 3 bells, so you can just keep clicking it on the boss, reapplying the bells, and killing the boss that way. It should provide pretty decent boss damage even with average weapon, and you will be able to progress the game significantly faster because of that. So talking about the rest of the skills, when you swap to Whirling Assault, it's very simple. You're just going to run across your whole map and spam only Whirling Assault. You don't need anything else. For generating charges and using charge stuff, I'm using it only on bosses. So before you're entering to the boss arena, you just need to cast your Killing Palm, get your power charges, like all of them, cast charge stuff, and after that enter the boss arena. That's the only moment when I'm using the charges. Everything else is not too important. I still have a rend in my build just in case to use it occasionally on bosses, but the damage is enough to just completely ignore it. That way, practically the only thing you need is Bell, charge stuff, Killing Palm, and Whirling Assault. In the future, we will be able to re-pick Killing Palm and just use it differently, like getting charges from our gloves. But at the moment, those gloves are too expensive, they cost more than 20 divines, and I don't really believe it's worth the investment, so just keep using Killing Palm to kill the basic bells and get charges before boss fights. So for Killing Palm, like Thrill of the Kill, Charge Profusion, and Blazing Critical is your supports. I'm currently also using Herald of Ice, but it's empty, without a single big support. Just because it's working fine, I'm probably going to add Magnified Area a little later on, and Elemental Armament when I have enough STR, because currently I'm at the limit. So for Herald of Ice to work, it's very important to have a lot of cold damage in your build. It's heavily recommended, otherwise it's not going to work. If it's not working for you, you can always just run Herald of Thunder instead, together with Herald of Ash. Herald of Ash is still absolutely amazing, it's helping a lot with the clear. I recommend to run it through the campaign, and I recommend to use it like at almost all possible places. So next thing is Fallen Thunder. At the moment at the build, I'm not using Fallen Thunder like at all, just because Whirling Assault is good enough to clear everything, including bosses. So that skill is still staying in the build, but it's practically rudimentary at the moment. As another thing, like another aura, I'm using Wind Dancer, which is only 30 spirit but providing some evasion, with blind on it. Next support should be probably Magnifying, but don't overpay Exalted for additional supports for such a small thing. For charge stuff, I'm using Prolonged Duration and Perpetual Charge. Perpetual is not really needed because you're not going to utilize charges anyway, so just running charge with Prolong should be good enough. You can also add something like Shock inside, but it's absolutely fine as is. So when you're looking at the guide at the moment, I recommend for you to be between late game variation, like early late game, and practically Waystone's variation. Both of them are viable, but to properly swap to early late game, you will need significantly better gear and significantly more investment. So at the moment, just staying in between and following what you can see in that video is the best option for you. Now let's talk quickly about the gear and survivability. First off, I recommend to use Ward. You can add Ward together with a Runic Anvil, which is probably staying in your hideout, and if you're just going to click it, you can add your items here and add Ward to them. If your items are not too great, especially not body armor, I recommend to add Ward to it, so I have warded my items, because they're pretty average at the moment. However, if you're investing into very good items with high evasion, rating and energy shield, you can avoid adding Ward in there, you can just focus on evasion and energy shield itself. So I would still recommend to probably keep Runic Ward on at least like one item, just in general, to give a little protection, or add it to your items if those items are pretty bad in general. Now let's talk more a little about items themselves. So I'm currently using Beacon of Aziz because it's very cheap, and since you're dealing all types of critical damage, I think it's going to work pretty nice. You're doing like fire, cold, and lightning. It's mostly lightning actually, but a lot of cold damage too. And Beacon of Aziz is going to help us, especially against bosses, so I can definitely recommend that, considering it's so cheap. For the rings, you just need to get a lot of resistances and some damage, so I have damage to attacks twice here. If you will get life, it will be even better, if not, it's alright. Same for the second ring, it's again some damage and elemental resistances here and there. Since we are not currently playing CI, I recommend to get Chaos like up at least 30% to survive it better. So for your gloves, generally you just need to get basic gloves with double damage, and the rest could be anything. Perfectly it should be triple damage, but I have a pretty mediocre gloves at the moment, and I'm just using what currently dropped. So as a rune in the gloves, I recommend to use Thane Granular Runes of Mastery, just because we're doing like non-damaging elements pretty often. So same goes with weapon, like Sakaval's Rune of the Hunt and Farrell Rune of the Hunt, like both of them are pretty great. For the boots, just focus on getting movement speed, like 30% is very important here, and some resistances on top. For the helmet, you can practically run anything again, a lot of evasion, some energy shield would be absolutely fine, together with life if you're still a life build. And same for the body armor, getting a little deflection right here, together with some evasion rating. My current items, except my rings and weapon, are pretty bad, so just use them as an option to see the items of literally like day 1 update. It's still enough to farm tier 15s without a single issue, so I'm updating them slowly based on what appearing on the market. And I also heavily recommend to use Chevron Satchel for your survivability boost. Chevron Satchel is going to give you life recovery from flask applies to energy shield. For it to work properly, you will need a specific flask with % of recovery applied instantly, or with a flask which has like full instant recovery. So at the moment, keep in mind that instant recovery is absolutely necessary for Satchel to work. And your mana flask is also not so important, but I recommend to get some instant recovery on mana too, so you can just spam it. Also, for better survivability when monsters are hitting you, you can just spam Ultimate Life Flask non-stop to recover pretty decent amount of life and survive things that otherwise would kill you. Boosting survivability further, just like improving items in general, getting more evasion rating and more energy shield. Next step is also going to be reaching Chaos Inoculation, but at the moment until you get at least like 4k energy shield, I don't recommend to even think about it because it's going to lower your survivability. Now let's talk about the tree. So at the moment the tree is pretty basic. Right here I'm doing the same thing like in the guide, taking Step Like Mist, mostly for mana regeneration and movement speed. I believe that going for conservative casting is pretty important because higher level Whirling Assault is very mana hungry. I also recommend to roll on one of your rings like physical damage leached as mana, but I currently don't have it myself, so I will probably add it to the next iteration of my rings. Getting Decent Sweep is pretty nice, and there's also cool new nodes. Right there, it's First Principle of the Hollow, which give you some resistances and maximum energy shield. And there's also Nature's Bite, which is helping you to inflict ailments. Like all 3 of them are helping with that, and I think it's absolutely awesome. We don't care much about charges, so I'm not taking one with the Storm right now, but I will probably add it a little later. So going for Stupefy and decent hits is also pretty important. Here I'm taking the crits. I currently don't have jewels in my socket, mostly because good jewels are pretty expensive at the moment, but you can check recommendations for jewels in the guide as well. Right here I'm taking Maiming Strike, Catalysis, and we're going up right here to reach Harness the Elements. As for the last Ascendancy, you should usually take Runic Meridians because it's going to give you a lot of upside just from basic runes. However, keep in mind that there's a bug, so when you're coming to Trial Master at proper level and you're trying to add the masks, it's giving you provided item is not correct. So getting the last Ascendancy at the moment is mostly Sekemas, and that's the reason why I'm waiting for that bug to be fixed, since I don't really want to run Sekemas instead of just Trial. So take the Runic Meridians on the last, and make sure you're not making the same mistakes spending time in the Trial of Chaos. So at the moment there's at least a few cool things to test, and next update is probably going to showcase Trinity Swap and how we are going to utilize it to get even more damage. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates. Ronarray out.